Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Blather 206 from Curse at Play. We're going to explain that in a second. Before we even get started, as is almost customary now, we're doing this on our Quadverum TV channel on Odyssey. 3 timelines in Twitter. If you don't know what you are, well, just find them. And our old channel in YouTube. But the channel in YouTube is not going to be there for too long. It's just so that we say we still exist to 8,500 people who apparently don't know how to click Odyssey on their screens. We're not going to be answering the chat in YouTube. We're going to be paying attention to the chat in Odyssey. So if you want to chat with us, come to Odyssey. If you want to support this channel, come to Odyssey, click on subscribe. It's free. And notifications. It works pretty much the same as in every other video channel outlet. And that way, you know when we're coming on. You can always click on support and make a donation to the channel, or like, let me see. Yes, Sarah is just on the chat. Click on the $sign in the chat and send us something like a super chat so that you can send us your good wishes together with, I don't know, a couple of coffees. If that doesn't work, there is always quadverum.com/support us, where you can support both the social media site and the channel. And God forbid you feel in a generous way and you're willing to splurge 2 cups of coffee per month to join as a channel member and make sure that we can continue to produce stuff for you. As a channel member, you're going to get some shows that are exclusive for members and occasionally shorts, of which I'm going to be doing quite a little bit of in the next month from the land of most of our ancestors. So, having said all of that, this is Saul Montes-Bradley, the largest human repository of useless information from my golden cage in southeast Florida. And with me is this guy, not that guy. That guy is not here. This guy, Thomas Wictor, the only living expert in World War I flamethrowers, and I should say a master survivalist to have been able to make it this far in Californication. So, Thomas, how are you on such a weird day for the world?
I'm good. Every time you say golden cage, I think of this horrific, I think it was a early 60s movie called Lady in a Cage, I believe. And it's in this era, they started making these really dark, weird movies like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane and Hush, Hush, Sweet Charlotte. And so, what the heck was her name? She's still alive. She's like 100 years old. Not Elsa Lanchester. She was in Robin Hood with Errol Flynn. So she was in this movie, and she was a paraplegic, and she had an elevator cage. And one day it took her from the second floor to the fifth floor or first floor. And one day these escaped lunatics came, and this was James Caan's first starring role. And they were completely off their rockers, and she ended up getting stuck between floors, so they couldn't reach her. And they were like they're getting all these people to come to the house, and they're murdering them, and it's an absolute nightmare. At some point, they managed to get up in the cage, and she gouges out James Caan's eyes, and so he's like wandering around, going, "All right, where are you? Where are you?" And it was so. It's made 65 years ago, and
Yeah.
it's much more impactful than any of the splatter fests you see now. It's like, there have been so many horror movies made now. There's one called a Serbian movie, and it was made to protest censorship. So it's got like outrageously graphic, violent, and sex scenes simply for the purpose of putting them in a movie.
Okay.
And I haven't seen it, but everyone who's
But you don't need to use your imagination for a horror movie about Serbia. Just land in anywhere in Serbia with a phone and record what you see.
well, what everybody who's seen it has said is that the movie loses all its impact within the first half hour, and it's a
Right.
2 hour. I mean, it's a dumb movie, and I still remember, scene by scene from this Olivia de Havilland, that was her name. Olivia de Havilland is in this movie, and so Olivia, I remember scene by.
She died last year, didn't she?
I don't know. I don't know. I probably she was.
And she was about 100.
She was about 100, yeah, and
Yeah.
Good genes considering all the smoking and drinking that woman did.
Oh, come on. She knew how to live life. She was beautiful, too.
Well, I mean, that's what people say, but I mean, my father lived life too. He drank 2 bottles of scotch a day and smoked 5 packs of filterless cigarettes. And at the end of his life, he was like, "I feel like shit all the time." It's like,
Well, my uncle John Charles smoked
right,
4 packs a day, drank a case of whiskey a day,
and
chased women up and down,
And
and
he was-
at 94 he was helping the nurse at the home.
Yeah,
It's the lack of the draw, I guess.
yeah, and I don't know. I'm my goal is to see how old I can get without turning into this enfeebled disaster who's like my father feels like shit all the you know
Well, may it be quite a number of long years from now, my friend.
Yeah.
Sarah is telling us that Olivia de Havilland died in Paris in 2020.
oh,
And
okay.
Michael adds that she was 104.
Yeah, I mean, okay, she was known to have a taste for the bottle, and I think it was Olivia de Havilland and her sister. Her sister was another star.
Joan
And-
Fontaine.
This 80-year feud,
Hmm.
and her sister was really, really. I never thought Olivia de Havilland was especially beautiful. I thought her sister was like shockingly beautiful.
Yep.
She also lived to be quite old. But I mean, nobody does old age like the Brits. When you see someone like Michael Caine, who's in his 90s. I mean, it's amazing. He's officially retired, but I don't know about that. My guess.
He can do better than people 50 years his junior.
Oh yeah.
Oh God, no, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Listen, Sean Connery, what was like the hot throbbing male part well into his 80s.
Oh yeah. I mean, he lived to be in his 90s. I mean, I'm convinced that the majority of it is genetic. I mean, both my parents lived to be 85, and they had the worst diet of any 2 people I've ever seen. And they did have, I mean, my father, it was like his hobby was collecting serious diseases. But
And experimenting them.
yeah, and my mother, she lived as long as she did by simply ignoring everything.
Right.
And, despite
If she only had lived long enough to find out that the Cheops pyramid is in Teotihuacan, Mexico, and La Pirámide del Sol in Giza Plateau.
Oh yeah. And our president's only 80. Okay, the thing about my parents was that despite all their health issues, they suffered, I mean, their minds had not deteriorated in the slightest. They were up to date. My mother always fooled people on the phone because she sounded like a woman in her 30s.
Right.
And my father was driving himself, and he had a spotless record, and his problem was that he ignored his cancer, and by the
Right.
time they caught it,
It was too late.
yeah, I mean, okay, they said that they would be able to treat him so that it wouldn't shorten his natural lifespan. All of my father's relatives, except for his father and mother, I mean, his uncle Gil lived to be almost 100, and Gil, in every photograph, has a cigarette pack in his breast pocket. And,
and it wasn't a decoration.
No. I mean, his father died at 64, and his mother was 77. But his mother had completely unmanaged diabetes, and his father, all he ate was meat, cheese, and potatoes.
That's
And
my diet.
yeah, and I'll be surprised if you live to be in the 90s.
Hey, my father, bless him, made it to 87, but what got him had nothing to do with all of this. And he was an avid beef eater, like the rest of us. And what got him had nothing to do with the diet.
Oh yeah.
Then there is my cousin Naibi, who wrote in Barcelona in 2014, and I remember while she was pretty much in her deathbed, telling me about the inconveniences of having colon cancer in Spain. She says, colon cancer? I don't get it. I never smoked through my ass. Which goes to prove that you can be in the worst possible situation and still not lose your sense of humor.
Yeah.
I don't know. One of the longest living ethnic groups in the world is in the Caucasus.
Yeah.
These assholes live to be 120, 130. You take a look at what they eat, and you become painfully aware that if that was your diet, you would not make it to 30.
Yeah. I mean, it has to do with, okay, it's very controversial to say that humans evolved simultaneously in several different places. There's the out of Africa approach is
Lucy.
Right, is considered the only answer. But
Yeah, not anymore.
well, I mean,
Yeah, and you're going there. I'm not.
Well,
I think you're going that way.
Yeah, I mean, there could have been something prior to Lucy that spread out everywhere, and then I mean, it's just nobody really knows, and this is why when somebody tells you the science is settled, they're idiots, because science is never settled.
It never is,
and it's always politicized. If you dare to hold a position in the sciences that humans may have evolved in multiple places simultaneously, you're considered a racist. And I mean, you just have to go.
Not to mention other hominids, some of which may have interbred with humans.
Well,
and that's why we end up with Biden. This is what happens when you fuck a Neanderthal.
Well, they used to think that the Cro-Magnons exterminated the Neanderthals, and now they think that they just simply interbred with them.
Yes.
And
all of us can think of pretty decent fucking examples of almost pure Neanderthal amongst us.
Yeah, and so it has nothing to do with race. You have to go where the science takes you, and if that means that you're gonna hurt the feelings of some idiot with a political agenda, then who cares? I mean, I don't care.
Yes. Look at that. There is a question here, and I'm going to draft you for the answer. Why are humans getting taller over time? Look at Baron Trump. Well, who says that is so? If you go to the Tower of London, you're going to find the armor of one of the barons 500 years ago, who was a 7-foot giant. You look at the armor now and you say, if I ever meet that son of a bitch inside that thing, I hope he's a friend.
Well,
in Japan, they used to be singularly small, but now they're tall. In Germany, after World War II, there is a generation of dwarfs. And
East German.
What many would tell you is that diet, lack of protein, as your muscles and bones develop, will stunt growth.
Well, also, okay, with humans, it's not a steady path. I mean, the Vikings were gigantic, then people got smaller, then they got bigger, then they got smaller, then they got bigger.
It has everything to do with quality of life and diet.
Quality of life, diet, genetics, and it's really hard. I mean, okay, I got interested in turn of the century strongmen, and I was looking up their exercise routines and their physiques and everything. And these guys were half the size of today's gym guys who take steroids and everything, but they were much stronger. And it turns out that their strength lay in their tendons and their ligaments. And 100 years ago, around the turn of the century, everybody walked everywhere. Everybody lifted and carried things everywhere, and they had much more opportunity. Okay, my father was 6'2", and he weighed about 168 pounds most of his life, say 170 pounds, and he was the physically the strongest person I've ever come across, and it was all because he'd been doing heavy manual labor since he was about 9 or 10 years old, and he had gigantic hands with the most massive tendons and ligaments. I mean, his wrists were gigantic, and he didn't have huge muscles. He was a wiry guy, but he was massive. He was like a gibbon or something. And my brother, who lives in Vegas, inherited that physique where his arms are actually longer. We measured him because we were working in a bookstore, and the job had to do with attaching the back of a shelf to the frame of the shelf. And I couldn't get my arms around the side of the shelf, and he could do it no problem. He's shorter than me. He's a good 2 inches shorter than me, and his arm span was 2 inches longer than mine. So his arms are longer than he is tall, just like my father. He's like a gibbon. And my Vegas brother is massively strong. And so it has to do with I mean, today you could take steroids and everything, but that's what we give to like beef cows, and they end up
No, that's not going to long term. That's not going to do shit for people,
What
except maybe shrink their balls and their brains.
it bulked up, but circus or strongmen in the turn of the century didn't have these huge boobs that are big on
the pectorals.
Yeah, it's like turkey breasts. We give drugs to turkeys so they end up with those huge breasts. It's exactly the same idea. And
yes, but you see all of these, and then, like I said, you take a look at the Japanese, and after World War II, when the diet changed, the average height of the Japanese citizen increased, and now they are much, much taller than they were a generation ago, on average, of course. There's something to be said for early diet. Of course, people say genetics. Well, yeah, if you come from a family of Congo pygmies, chances are you're not going to be too tall, however many steaks you eat.
They Viking skeletons. Okay, they found these red-headed mummies in China that had blue eyes, and they were gigantic. They're all like 6'4". So it's genetics and diet. But I watch a lot of Korean and Japanese movies, and the Koreans love to make assassin movies, government assassins. And I watched a Japanese movie. No, it was a Korean movie. And this guy, the villain, was doing all these outrageous exercises, and he was fit, but he wasn't a freak. He wasn't a gigantic, bulked up Schwarzenegger type. And he was doing things like he was doing pull-ups where he was holding his body horizontal and then self up. And then when he was doing push-ups, he was holding his body horizontal up off these bars and doing push-ups with his body sticking out behind him.
Yeah.
So he was just one giant muscle, but not bulky. And you see a lot of that in the East Asian countries. And it's a different physique to begin with, but it would be almost impossible for someone of pure East Asian physical genetic stock to bulk up the size of some of these American gym guys, these Germanic gym guys, So
unless you fatten them up like a sumo wrestler.
Yeah, those guys are not only enormous, they're also massively tall.
Yes.
A sumo is like 6'4" or 6'5", and when you see them walking down the street, they're a head taller than everybody else. So,
and 2 or 3 asses wider than everybody else.
Yeah. So,
but anyway, so that's the thing to the question in the chat. But I'm glad we got to the Neanderthal. That explains so much of what's going on around today. I'm sure that this week you could not miss the her report, and that the president of the United States is a malicious felon who cannot be brought to trial because he's too fucking demented to know what the crap is going on.
Yeah, but he's perfectly fine to be our president.
Yes. That doesn't it provide you with a sense of relief to know that the commander-in-chief doesn't know what day of the week it is?
Well, okay, we've known that for a long time. What's amazing to me is to watch all these Democrat politicians and commentators on TV making up excuses, saying, "Oh, he was under stress." Everybody forgets things every now and then.
No, we all do. That's true.
And okay.
don't ask me when my son died, because fortunately I hope to die before finding out. But ask me when my grandfather died,
Well, I mean,
and see if I forgot.
no, I mean, I know the day my parents were diagnosed with cancer. I know the day each of them died. And for a guy who wears the rosary of his son Bo, and
Yeah, the rosary of Our Lady
um, uh,
of Our Lady of
yeah.
well, Our Lady. What the hell? Let's move on.
Well, see, it's really fascinating because you have Biden sort of publicly running out of gas, and how the hell dare they bring up the death of my son? Well, they weren't bringing up the death of your son. They were checking to see if your brain works.
Yes.
And obviously it doesn't.
It doesn't.
Oh,
Biden reminds me of that guy, who was telling me, uh, Saul, I'm getting in on years, but fortunately, my memory is still completely intact. Knock on wood. Who's there?
yeah,
And that's Biden.
yeah. No,
So
it's
I don't know what to do with this information, because you and I have been poking fun at the son of a bitch forever. Now there is an official report from the special counsel of the U.S. that states in so many words that the fucker is too demented to stand trial.
yeah. No, I mean that's when that happens. You get put in a mental hospital. Um, you,
I
you get
mean,
you get
just make sure he doesn't wander on the streets.
it's no if you commit a crime. Okay, there's a former porn star named Ron Jeremy who was going to go on trial for raping women, and they determined he has Alzheimer's and he can't, you know, he can't be prosecuted because he has Alzheimer's. So he went popping into a state sort of hospital for the, you know, for the criminally demented or whatever. And so they didn't just let him go. And if you have the special counsel of the appointed by the Department of Justice saying we can't prosecute him because he's too senile, then I mean, okay, let's be clear here. I don't want the 25th Amendment invoked.
No, please don't.
And all the Republicans or conservatives who are calling for that are idiots. We want
Yes.
Biden to run. We
Yes.
want Biden to run.
Yes.
Not that the Democrats have anybody to replace him, but Biden is not unpopular because of his disabilities. He's unpopular because of his policies, and we want him to stay in place.
And frankly, he had half of the lights out 3 years ago. Another 10 months ain't gonna change shit.
No, and he is obviously too arrogant to admit that. I mean, they're going to have to remove him by force, which nobody has the appetite to do. And
Mhm.
if the Republicans are smart, the 25th Amendment is that his cabinet secretaries call for a vote from Congress. Is that how it's done?
No. It's the cabinet secretaries and a couple more people
The vice president.
vote to. The vice president is excluded from this vote for obvious reasons, and they vote to find a president incapable of performing his duties, and then they remove him from office, and the vice president is sworn in. Now, who is not more demented than Biden wants Kamala Harris as president?
Well, I mean,
Anybody?
she's okay. let's see. All right. Blah, 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 blah. Okay. Okay.
They're looking it up to make sure we don't fuck up.
Yeah, who can invoke the 25th Amendment? It takes a few steps of approval. Okay, just tell me what it means. Okay, the Vice President is a primary starting point for invoking the 25th Amendment, specifically the fourth section. The Vice President, in conjunction with either a majority of the Executive Cabinet or a specific body designated by Congress, must invoke the amendment in tandem. Vice President takes over once these parties submit a formal written declaration to Congress. If the President refutes this, they can return to power for 4 days, in which time the other parties can again submit a declaration.
By now, we're already in the elections.
Hold on. The other parties can again submit a declaration invoking the President's removal. If this happens, the Vice President takes over again, and Congress must secure a 2/3 vote in both House and Senate within 21 days to permanently remove the President. So, in other words, this isn't going to happen.
It ain't going to happen. By the way, everybody in the chat was correct. Because we all mentioned one part of this, but not all. So whoever said it was 2/3 of Congress, they were right. Whoever said it was the cabinet, they were right. Whoever said it was the president, the vice president, they were right.
Yeah.
It's all of the above.
So,
but yeah, it's a convoluted process that, by the way, but if they were able to do this shit, and I don't think so,
no,
we'd already be past the elections.
Well, see, also, this relies on Kamala Harris being the one to start the process, which she's not going to do in a million years because she doesn't want the job. Like the world right now, Kamala Harris does not want the responsibility of dealing with the Russians, dealing with Iran, dealing with the Chinese. She doesn't want the responsibility to do any of that. I mean, she's been cooling her heels for 3 years.
She doesn't know the difference between any of them.
Well, she's the worst boss anybody's ever had. She has a massively high turnover in her staff because she's an idiot or she's a jerk. She's a terrible boss. And she doesn't want any she has no real responsibility right now, and she doesn't want to start having it.
By the way, Kelly from New York is saying, Obama wants Kamala. Hey, if you had to go to bed with Michelle every night, you'd want Kamala too.
Well, Obama doesn't matter. I mean, it's
of course not. Who gives a shit?
If it's okay, you have to get the majority of the executive cabinet members. That's not going to happen. Then you have to get 2/3 of Congress. The Republicans are not going to vote for this because they want Trump to run against Biden.
And let's face it, my friend, the longer this senile bastard stays put, the worse it is for them.
Yeah.
And if the country could withstand, in whatever shape, 3.5 years of this senile imbecile, what's another 10 months?
Well, it's too late now to do anything. The only thing that really matters at this point, considering all the damage that's already been done, is that we're probably, I'll say possibly, we're possibly looking at a massive terrorist attack before the elections because...
Well, the bad guys are planning on it.
Yeah, in Iran, okay, today the Israelis found the brain of Hamas.
Under the UNRWA headquarters.
Hamas built a tunnel right next to a UN compound that they knew would never be bombed by the Israelis. And it's where they have all their computers, all their disks, all their thumb drives, all the information on their crypto accounts. Everything is there. And the Israelis Israelis snuck up on it and they killed. They had 2 guards, which is brilliant, but all the others are already dead. And then they scooped all that up and they're unencrypting it as we speak. So Iran knows that Hamas is done, and if they give Hezbollah the order to wage full war, Hezbollah will be done, and then what does Iran do after that? So I think the Iranians are likely to call to set their little cells in motion here in the U.S.
They are definitely planning it, and they have been for quite some time now. This is not as a consequence of today's, which I don't think you meant it that way, but just to be on the clear side with everybody out there. It's not like the Iranians will now plan an attack on the U.S. because their Hamas's headquarters were blown up. No, they've been planning for months. They've been positioning Hezbollah operatives all over the U.S. There is anywhere between 800 estimated by the Department of Homeland Insecurity and 3,000, probably a more realistic view, that snuck into the U.S. together with the 8 million people that Biden allowed to walk through the border unimpeded. And they have confirmed cells and they are planning attacks. And there is intelligence from both Afghanistan and Iran that this is the case. Will they be ready in 2 or 3 months? I don't know. But like you said, without assigning a degree of probability, it is most definitely fucking possible.
Well, all they need are rifles, and
all they need is guards.
I mean, rifles is.
No, but I heard of
they can get
things.
Cartels, and okay, the cartels haven't been using car bombs because it's much easier to use rifles.
Yes.
Use machine guns. And
no, when I said cars, I didn't mean car bombs. I said cars. You can have 50 small-scale attacks in schools, museums, parks across the country simultaneously.
Right.
Each one would be anywhere from 4 to 10 dead. Collectively, it would be a day of mourning for the entire country.
Well, what people don't understand about Iran is that they would do this before an election in order to warn the possible incoming president of what they're capable of doing. And obviously, okay, they don't know Trump in the slightest. They didn't learn. They kept their powder dry during the Trump years, but they forgot. And this is a phenomenon that happens to everybody. Everybody forgot what was actually said about COVID before the insanity with the masks and everything. I didn't forget. And that's why I never got vaccinated, because I had none of the comorbidities, and I'm not living with anyone. So, I didn't bother, and I never got it. I never got the disease. And people forget something that they heard not too long ago. In 2020, for example, that 2020 may as well be 1920 or 1820.
They've already forgotten all the shit. Listen, anybody who talks about Biden's vaccine is because they have zero fucking memory.
Yeah.
They're worse than Biden.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's...
Who remembers when Kamala Harris was screeching that I'm not going to put the Trump vaccine into my body?
Well, none of them were. None of them were.
None
And
of them were until December, until after the elections.
well, think about this. When Trump got COVID, all the talking heads started saying that they needed to invoke the 25th Amendment. When Trump wore hard-soled shoes and had to walk down a wet ramp, and he walked in little tiny steps, they said, oh, he's too old to be president. Biden has fallen on his face too many times for us to even count going up the stairs on one of the
or walking on a stage.
Walking on a stage. In one of these, he fell twice, one after another, going up the stairs. And now he's been officially declared as senile by the Department of Justice, and everybody's saying, "What's the C here?" So it's
not everybody, because I have the impression that it's open season on Biden. That the elements in the Democratic Party that are worried shitless because Trump is already the Republican candidate, and with a strong support from the party. By the time this is done, it's going to be like 80%. And B, he is seriously beating Biden in just about every battleground state. Seriously.
Well, he's making progress in the blue states. He's got people in Chicago and New York saying, "Come see us. We want to go see you."
Yeah, no, and he will. But of course, instead of losing New York by 20 points, he's going to lose New York by 8 or 10 points. I don't think he's going to win New York, or Illinois, or California.
No, California is a lost cause. I don't know enough about New York to say.
I know enough about New York to know. By the way, upstate New York is a completely different fucking ballgame.
No, California is a special case. The people left in this state are like Bill Maher, where Bill Maher comes right out and says that, the way things are done here are terrible, but he still supports Gavin Newsom because Gavin Newsom is a winner. He can't name anything that Newsom has won, but he's a winner. And if you
Asshole of the Year award,
if you really push him, Maher gets angry. And so this is a guy who views leftism with the same fervor as an extremely religious person who is trying desperately to wipe out all other religions. That's how Bill Maher feels about his politics. And that's how Californians generally feel.
I saw a little movement from the Atlantic to the New York Slimes hitting hard on Biden.
Oh, sure.
They never did before. They were too busy licking his balls from behind with the nose stuck up his ass. But now they're beginning to question him. I mean, they never questioned him when he didn't campaign for the presidency, because now we've all forgotten that throughout the campaign, with the COVID excuse, he never left the fucking basement. Now all of a sudden they're beginning to figure out that maybe there is a problem. I think they're going to go after him because they're scared.
Well, I mean, let them. It'll just tear the party apart.
Oh yeah,
the progressives will demand that they put in someone like AOC. The old, I mean, there's nobody there. It's like they literally have nobody. There's nobody even on the horizon coming for the Democrats.
And the few, like you mentioned, Newsom, it's like, give me a fucking break. Please, go ahead, make my day. Put that moron on the running and see what happens.
No, I mean, Newsom has left a trail of destruction his entire political career. And if he honestly thinks that he has a shot to be president when he's got, I mean, he's got blood on his hands. He's got. I saw a movie, a science fiction movie. It's called Looper, and Looper was made in 2012, and it took place in something like 2044. And in 2044, Los Angeles was comprised of nothing but the extremely rich and the extremely poor.
Yeah.
So the main character has some massive sports car, and he's driving through downtown LA past the tents. And this is made in 2012, and it was considered this dystopia that would never happen. It's reality.
Hello, yeah. Have you seen it this morning?
Well, I mean, I had to go to downtown LA twice in a row to confirm my identity with the IRS, and that was a complete nightmare. It was. I had to park in the parking garage, and I didn't use the elevator because all the screaming, crazy, barfing, crapping homeless were camped outside the elevator, and they were trying to mob everybody who, was getting off the elevator. So I was walking up the car ramp, where it said no pedestrians, but it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
I'd rather face an oncoming truck than that mob.
No, and they're cleaning out some section because they're filming a Leonardo DiCaprio movie. So DiCaprio will lecture us all on how immoral we are, and then he'll get in his private jet and gorge himself and gain another 30 pounds.
But come on, how many people actually give a flying fuck what DiCaprio has to say?
Well,
5?
I was never a fan in the first place because he just sort of made the same movies over and over and over.
Over and over again.
But that's another aspect of this craziness, is that there's one guy in the world in the Western world who lives as if climate change is a crisis, and he's an actor named Ed Begley Jr. And other than him, none of these other people actually. During the pandemic, there was this whole spate of Earth is dead, and so we have to go to other planets movies. Stupidest horseshit you've ever seen in your life. Just the whole notion. I saw something where they were talking about how we've only got 30 years of oil left because it's now they're having to drill deeper and deeper to get oil. And it's like, the reason they're drilling deeper is because it's now financially viable because of new technology.
And because we don't give them permits to drill where it's right under the surface, like in fucking Alaska.
Yeah. No, I mean,
but I've been hearing canards about, we're running out of oil in 20 years, in 10 years, since the 1980s.
Yeah, no, I remember being in the 5th grade and hearing that.
God, it's like, don't they ever tire of the same bullshit? Does anybody remember what these fuckers were saying 10 years ago?
No, they don't remember what they were saying a week ago. I mean,
how long ago were we castigated by this Nazi freak from Sweden and John Kerry that we had 10 years to save the world?
No, we have 11 minutes. We have 11 minutes to save the world.
Wasn't that like 15 years ago? We're all dead now.
Yeah. No, I'm just going to go break my. I'll fall off the wagon then if we have 11 minutes. I'll race down to the 7-Eleven, or do they sell alcohol? There's a whiskey or a liquor store next door, so I'll just buy something or steal it.
Hey, if it's the end of the world, I'm grabbing my wife and going to the shack. If I'm going to leave this world, I'm going to live it with a smile.
No, it's. I was just thinking about that today. Just we're told all these lies by people who themselves are catastrophic liars, and all the tired conspiracy theories about JFK and all of that, the CIA, all the people who were telling you they're selling that stuff, they're the same ones who say things like, in the Vietnam War, the American military was defeated by rat-eating peasants wearing rubber tire sandals, and it's like,
and eating 50 grams of rice a day.
Oh yeah, I forgot that. That's like an outrageous lie. The North Vietnamese had an air force of jets. They had tanks. They had heavy artillery, and most importantly, they had one of the most sophisticated anti-aircraft systems in the world.
And they lost almost everything at the end of the Tet Offensive.
Yes.
And not only was the U.S. Army not defeated by a band of semi-naked palookas with a bunch of rice in their pockets. By the way, the Soviets, the Chinese, they put everything they had in North Vietnam.
All you have to do is just watch that John Wayne movie, The Green Berets. It gets a lot of bad press, but at the beginning, the reporter's asking this Green Beret, why we should be in Vietnam. And he starts like taking, this is a Chinese weapon, this is Yugoslav ammunition, this is a
Czechoslovakian explosives,
and this is Polish, and all of that was real. And communism croaked out because of its own worthlessness, but the mindset remained in okay.
It's very much alive.
Yeah, I mean, okay, the not the economics, but the control and the savagery remained in China, in Russia.
Well, China is a communist country with a few cities administered under fascist rules.
Yeah, and Russia is a communist country that is basically a hybrid. It's hybrid of communism, fascism, and imperialism,
and feudalism.
And feudalism, but which is funny because Tucker Carlson's great interview with the Tsar.
Oh, I thought you'd never mention him. That makes me so happy and warm inside.
See, I didn't watch it, but I did hear that all of Russian media is very upset. So the Russians are very unhappy with the way things went, and most importantly, they're unhappy with Putin because all Putin did was just spew out the same tired talking points he's been spewing since the beginning.
Well, Putin must have been watching Beer Blather 2 years ago when everybody said he wanted the Soviet Empire back, and I said, no, he wants the Kiev and Rus Empire.
Exactly, yeah.
And remember that we had that conversation 2 fucking years ago.
Yeah.
And Putin spent an hour of the 2 hours of this fiasco talking about the history of the Kiev and Rus. And by the way, he didn't get it right. He forgot how Sviatoslav raped the daughter of the Count of Polosk in front of her family. Because, these were like the most advanced people on the planet, right? Right? I mean, it was like a bunch of rhesus monkeys with swords. And
I didn't watch it, but okay. You gave up, right?
I gave up, but then after we spoke, I went back. I couldn't stomach the whole thing.
Okay.
Running on the Kiev and Rus it's more than any human being can withstand.
So he jibber jabbered about the Kievan Rus. Ukrainians aren't a real people; they're just
No,
Russians.
they were invented by Russians.
Right. He said that he has no territorial designs on any other country.
He specifically mentioned Poland and Latvia.
Okay, so
which is a rather. I mean, why would you say? I mean, imagine if the U.S. president came out at a press conference tomorrow and said, "I assure you, we have no territorial ambitions on Canada."
yeah, exactly.
Why the fuck would you say that?
Exactly. And then he said the CIA blew up the Nord Stream pipeline.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the same CIA that
he gets his information from Seymour Hersh.
Exactly. No, I mean just a buffoon. And
oh God, you just said it. Putin comes across not as the evil dwarf from hell that I've always thought him to be, although he's still a narcissistic fucking dwarf. But he comes across as this blabbering moron.
yeah.
We are being challenged by the idiot grandson of a circus dwarf.
Well, see, the thing is that this is the star that Tucker Carlson has hitched his wagon to.
God. And Tucker came out, the only thing that Tucker didn't do is take off his panties and throw him at his face. He was like a Beatles groupie.
Oh yeah, no, he was giddy. He was giddy.
He was giddy. Even Putin made a comment as to Tucker being an effeminate, useful idiot.
Yeah, I mean, he said everything. He said, "Well, if you're a real reporter, you'd know this." I mean, he like trashed Tucker right to his face. And the day after, the day of, or after the interviews, like all the usual shills on the conservative YouTube, they were like, Tucker's bombshells. There were no bombshells, and now it's just all been memory hold. We just
fart. Nobody's talking about it anymore. 24 hours, and we've already forgotten.
Yeah, Tucker will break the internet. The U.S. government is terrified of the interview, and it's like, who told you that? Like why in the world would you think that?
Well, because that's part. And by the way, that's part and parcel of what the Russians have been doing with every single fucking information campaign in the past 20 years.
Well, the thing that gets me is I've had to stop watching a lot of people who I used to like, because they're exposing themselves as being really stupid, and they're exposing themselves as being huge fans of authoritarianism.
Yes.
I've heard more than one say democracy doesn't work because they're not getting what they want. Now, not getting
they're embracing Putin and Bukele.
Exactly. And
whoa,
it's in a democracy, you have a responsibility to bring people on your side by making a good argument, by explaining to them. And the people who say democracy doesn't work, it's the old stupid thing. It's like
it's Mussolini.
Well, if they did get the government they wanted, they would be the first people to be sent to the camps.
Not to the camps, to the wall.
To the wall.
In Cuban parlance, al paredón.
Yeah.
By the way, Joanne, one of our stoutest viewers, says nobody cares what Putin has to say to Tucker Carlson. I totally agree. I'll bet Trump watched it, though. No, my dear. He didn't watch it. I guarantee you he didn't watch it. He had something better to do, like play golf, hump Melania, or play with his grandkids. He's gonna have somebody draw up the keywords for him.
Yeah. No, I
He
mean,
doesn't have 2 hours to waste on this bullshit.
no. Somebody would report to him. Nothing to see here, but I mean, okay. I've lived in 5 socialist countries, authoritarian countries, and all these people who are basically calling for authoritarianism also self-identify as lovers of individualism and freedom. Those two ideas do not mix. An authoritarian is going to make sure that everybody is a conformist. So, and we're back to what we've said over and over again, that democracy is the worst governmental system in the world, except for
all others.
Yeah.
Churchill.
And Churchill also said that Americans eventually do the right thing after they've tried everything else. And this is our track record. We are people who don't really like to think,
Nope.
and we do like to try really, really, really bad ideas. All you have to do, I have a book called The World's Worst Aircraft, and
I know it. Yes.
Yeah, I mean,
Fascinating idea. Some of them.
Well, some guy built a plane that it was basically, it had an engine, but it was gonna be helped along by the fact that the wings would flap like a bird.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, they broke off because they had no support. No support. There was no.
He didn't quite grasp the concept of lift.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, and
these are like the Chinese fighter jets.
Exactly.
It's the only thing the J-20 is not doing is flapping its wings, but other than that, is the same piece of shit with no engines, mind you.
Yeah. And okay, you played me a clip of.
Okay, let's go, because we're the common thread to all of this is the Trump curse.
Right.
So now we have just to lead to this video. Now, of course, we have Biden certified lunatic, certified demented lunatic and felon by his own Department of Injustice, and Trump's prosecutor in Georgia seems to be having a little bit of love problems, and that's led to legal problems. I think she's going to jail.
Yeah.
And there is an investigation going on in the Georgia Senate now, and her dealings with her boyfriend, who she appointed, in spite of the fact that he had absolutely zero experience outside of real estate, to the tune of $1 million taxpayer dollars in the prosecution of Trump, and then they went hamping around the globe on that money. I mean, come on, you cannot write this shit down. The people at Saturday Night Live in its apex would have never thought this would fly as a joke. So she's about to be cooked. The Colorado Supreme Court is about to be handed its ass on a platter. And now we have the problem of Ukraine. A lot of the Q-tards out there in right-wing media don't seem to like Zelensky or Ukraine for reasons that I don't know and I don't give a shit about. And seem to love Putin because they like autocrats.
No, Zelensky's Jewish. That's the only reason.
That's the only reason. I didn't want to say it, but yeah, that would be the only reason. And they love autocrats like Putin. So, the yin and the yang have finally met. And part of the discourse is that Republicans and a lot of idiots in Ukrainian media have bought this because they have zero understanding of American politics, that Republicans oppose aid to Ukraine. Every single strong conservative Republican that I've spoken to in the past 2 years is adamantly in favor of giving Ukraine everything it needs, and in fact are very much fucking upset at the way the Biden administration has slow walked aid to Ukraine to the point of rendering it almost negligible.
Also, what Biden did was he deliberately sabotaged aid to Ukraine by inserting this border bullshit.
Yes.
Which he knew that would not pass because it would force us to choose between our own sovereignty and helping Ukraine. And so, and then by the Republicans refusing to pass that, then Biden could point to them and say, see, they're not helping Ukraine. And that lie has been parroted by the press all over the world.
Yes, and by the right-wing bullshitters in the clickbait industry.
Yep.
Now, in fact, the Republicans will be more than happy to approve an aid package for Ukraine and for Israel. And Biden's maneuver of tying aid to Israel and Ukraine to an obscene surrender at the border has made it impossible for anybody with a conscience to vote for that shit. And here's some of the proof. This guy that I'm going to show you now is House Intelligence Committee Chairman Mike Turner. Now, he is, of course, a Republican. And listen what he has to say about this.
The United States fully supports this funding, and that as legislators, we support it, and we believe that there's overwhelming support in the House and the Senate, and this will get done. It includes a package that provides the weapon systems that Ukraine has indicated that they need. Also, I know this group and others in the House and the Senate are very big proponents for longer range weapons being provided to Ukraine because of the needs on the battlefield that we're seeing evolve. The United States fully supports
not only are we going to approve aid for Ukraine, but we want longer range weapons to go to Ukraine.
Yep.
Now, but we have, why are we sending money to Ukraine when we don't have money to close the border? There are two fallacies in there. The first one is we're not closing the border for lack of funds. There's all the funds you want for it. So why are we paying over there if we don't have the money for this? Well, we do have the money for this. So why are we paying over there? We're not paying over there. It's a fallacy within a fallacy. This is what I told you that I showed the guys on Thursday, but I'm sure we have other people today. Look at this beauty. This is a lovely chart that shows us the contributions of various countries to Ukraine in weapons, that would be the dark blue line, and money, that would be the gray line, as a percentage of their GDP. Who contributed more, may I ask? Was it the U.S.? What do you think?
No, not in the slightest.
Not in the slightest. Actually, the U.S. is not within the top 10. Number one here is Poland.
Well, Cyprus beats us out.
Oh, yes. Poland is contributed way more than the U.S. as a percentage of GDP, which is the only way you can compare these things without going into apples and oranges. Has contributed way more in weapons and a shitload in money, up to 5% of their GDP. Can you imagine that? 5% of GDP. Do you have any idea how much money that would be in the US?
Yeah, it'd be gigantic.
Let me put it this way. 10% would be 3 trillion. So 5% would be $1.5 trillion just to match Poland. Then comes Estonia. Way more weapons than the Poles and twice as many as the US, and same thing for Lithuania and Latvia. Now, I wonder, can you imagine why Poland, Estonia, Lithuania, and Latvia may want to help Ukraine?
Yeah,
The Czech Republic,
right.
Norway, Slovakia, Bulgaria, Denmark, Germany, Finland, Croatia, Romania, Sweden, Netherlands, Hungary, Switzerland, the UK, Austria, Cyprus. And then comes the US with a pitiful amount in weapons and no money. Same as Canada.
Yeah. No, I mean,
So
this is
where's all that money? And why don't the Europeans do their part?
the Institute for the Study of War did their own study, and the Europeans and all non-American. Let's see. Let me get this right. Hold on. Okay. The European, Asian, and NATO allies have committed 178 billion
Yep.
to Ukraine, and we're at what, 60 billion now?
Yeah, approximately. We authorized 200, but we haven't delivered more than 80 to be sure.
Yeah, and again, we're not giving them money; we're giving them weapons.
Yeah, and the weapons we're giving them are not brand new ones.
Well, another argument made is that giving military aid to Ukraine degrades our readiness. It doesn't. We're
No,
not giving them weapons that are in our frontline arsenals. And
no.
you know,
You and I have already discussed it, but then again, there's always new people out there. We're giving them Patriot missiles that are left over from the First World War and don't have anywhere near the capabilities of our newest ones. We're giving them Abrams tanks that were decommissioned by the Marine Corps in 1998. We're giving them 40-year-old shit. Now, of course, they're fighting 40-year-old Russian shit, so ours is still better.
oh, the Ukrainians destroyed a T-55 tank, and it was tank number 320. And I'll be damned, somebody on Reddit found that same tank leading a column of tanks during
In Red Square.
the invasion of Hungary in 1956.
Isn't that lovely?
Yeah. So not only have the Russians warehoused tanks from 1956, they're losing them in Ukraine when they didn't lose them in Hungary in 1956.
Well, nobody opposed them in Hungary in 56 except for a few young people with guns
Exactly.
who were murdered mercilessly.
Yeah. No,
You know, it's very difficult to keep your wits about and not start bitching and moaning with these assholes,
well,
including Tucker.
okay, one thing that all the conservative YouTube fuckers who oppose aid Ukraine, they keep talking about forever wars and endless wars and the military-industrial complex, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, okay, are you saying that Russia didn't invade Ukraine? Are you saying that Russia is not threatening NATO? Are you saying that Russia didn't specifically threaten Sweden and Finland? Are you saying that none of this happened, that we just decided to pick a fight with Russia?
Yeah. Yeah, apparently the senile moron in the White House woke up one morning and said, Jill, I think we ought to fight Russia to the death. The opposite is true. Biden bent over backwards to assist Russia.
Well, we gave him the green light. He said that, that they make a border incursion or a small incursion, we won't do anything.
No, literally, if it is a matter of a few weeks, we're not going to intervene.
Then he also said that once it happened, he said our position was that Kiev was going to fall in no more than 3 days. So what's the point in helping the Ukrainians?
Bingo.
We were,
and they offered Zelensky transportation out of the country.
Right. Germany and the United States were the last Western allies to start, really helping the Ukrainians.
Yes, after everybody else applied sanctions to the Russians down to taking them out of the SWIFT system. And I discussed it with you more than a year ago. The Minister of Defense of Italy is the guy who put it best. When he criticized those who said that Italy's support for Ukraine was going to hasten World War III, he said, you got it upside down. If there's ever going to be a World War III, it's going to start the moment the Russian tanks reach the Polish border.
Well, okay, that was another sexy talking point. Breitbart News, World War III countdown, and World War III, World War III. Oh, they finally realized that Russia doesn't have the means to start a world war. So then they said, well, how can we afford, how else can we oppose this?
We're running out of munitions. We're running out of munitions.
Yeah, because we make a fixed amount and then that's it. We never make any.
Other than the fact that we were making about 10,000 a month, we have a stockpile of 155 millimeter ammo of 4.5 million of them.
Yeah, I mean,
if anybody thinks that the U.S. Army does not have a stockpile of 155 millimeter artillery shells, they're out of their fucking mind.
Well, also, I mean, sometimes you hear these people say we could be using that money for other things. It's like, okay, now you're saying the government needs to start using money for social services. That's what you're saying.
Right, because you're a fucking socialist and you want the government to have even more social justice programs out there.
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't work that way. When Congress allocates money, and
by the way, I would be all for canceling some of these social programs. Putting that money into defense.
There isn't this giant Scrooge McDuck bin full of cash that the government has, and you just go in there with like whatever those steam shovels are, and just scoop out giant chunks of money. And if you don't give it to Ukraine, then you put it back in the Scrooge McDuck bin.
Hey, if you find it, let me know. I'm going to go swimming in it.
Yeah, try and do that. You jump off that board, you go head first into all those coins, you're going to stop dead with a broken neck. So
yeah, but a big smile.
Okay. No, I mean, I can see swimming in paper money, but
when I was a kid, my grandpa, uncle, had a large textile factory, and in that factory there was a huge warehouse that had all of the cuts discarded from the manufacturing process. First they would cut these huge piles of fabric with the molds and all that jazz, and then what was discarded, they didn't throw away. They saved it in these warehouses because later on it was used to make paper. So they have these huge warehouses of fabric cuts. And guess who used to be Scrooge McDuck swimming in the fabric cuts? That's how I spent my time when I was 6. So
I've never jumped into a pile of leaves. I've never lived anywhere. I
I
guess
have.
this. I
I
guess.
lost my son in a pile of leaves once.
Oh, I hope you found it.
Oh, yeah, no, eventually I found him and all that jazz. But he decided to play hide and seek and got himself into a pile of leaves. It took me a while to find the son of a gun. Eventually, as I was walking by the pile of leaves, I could hear the giggling.
Ah,
That gave him away.
coast. I think we had leaves in Texas, but mostly we had these 200-foot pine trees, and
Oh, yeah.
be needles everywhere, but no, what do you call them? No leaves that turned color.
No. Those are just the pine needles and of course the pine nuts.
Yeah, the pine nuts. Oh my God, those were. I mean, I remember you could
Great to start a barbecue.
toasted pine or some kind of little seed in there or something.
Yes, there is pine nuts.
Yep.
Pine nuts. They're very expensive, by the way, because you need a shitload of them.
Yeah, I know. I mean,
Very much used in Italian and Middle Eastern cuisine.
no, I remember harvesting the little nuts out of these things. It was like,
Oh,
this
crap.
is so ridiculous. It's like we just worked through about 5 tons of pine cones just to get this little pile of things.
Well, that's why they're expensive, man. And I remember too, there is a variety of pine cone that doesn't open unless you heat it up.
Yep.
Which is why, Newsom, you son of a bitch, you need forest fires every now and then to renew the forest. Because the seeds of the pines are not coming out of the cone without some heat.
Well, I mean, that's another aspect of what is it called? I can't remember the name of people, these nutcases who insist on not doing anything to our forests except
the tree huggers, the ecologists,
whatever they call themselves.
morons.
Okay, here in California, there's these houses up on the hill here, and it's been illegal for years to clear out the underbrush. So there's like 40 or 50 years of underbrush there, and these houses are all on top of these hills with these valleys that are filled with 40 to 50 years of stuff that hasn't burned. So when it does burn, and it will, all those houses, they're super expensive. All that flame. There was an Oakland fire, and my girlfriend got caught up in it. She was on the freeway, and she said it was like a giant flamethrower. The flame was leaping the freeway, and people were turning around on the freeway and driving back to the exit. And she had to make a U-turn on the freeway because there was this wall of flame belching across the road.
Yep. I remember with my father when I was a kid, we were caught in the middle of a forest fire in Uruguay, and it was like riding a tube wave of fire.
Yeah.
And fortunately, we made it to the other side. But God, that thing can very quickly roast everybody in that highway.
Well, when my communist brother was in college, let's see, he went to Occidental and then he went to Berkeley, I think.
Oh, he spent some time with Obama. That's why he's nuts.
Well, he was up in the Bay Area, and can't remember, my brother and my father, my Vegas brother and my father went up to see him for some reason. They had to pick. Oh yeah, the Fairlane was dead because he'd used it as a dorm car, and so after the Fairlane died, or there's something else I can't even remember. Anyway, he took them to the house. They were going to stay overnight at this house he was staying at, and it was in a valley, and it had a wood shake roof, and it had 2 feet of dried needles on the roof, and all around the thing was needles and uncut dried underbrush.
Yes.
And it was in the middle of the summer. My father said, "We ain't staying here." He said, "This is a death trap." There was one road going out, and he said, "When we go in this house, I'll bet everybody's going to be smoking." And sure enough, they're all smoking. And he said,
Yeah.
to my
all it takes is one cigarette in the wrong place.
he said,
And
"We
they're
ain't
all dead.
here. This is a death trap." So they politely went and found a motel, and my communist brother was very offended, but it was a death trap. And then not too long later, they had the Oakland fire. He was in Oakland, so they had the Oakland fire, and it killed, I didn't even know how many people, a hell of a lot. We've had tons of these fires here in California where people are killed in their cars, and it's just these cars with these skeletons sitting in them. Yeah. And I don't know.
You don't want that fuck. But anyway, we got here talking about the Trumpers. What else did we? Oh, we didn't speak about Colorado, and the Supreme Court is about to shove Article 14 at the collective assholes of the Colorado Supreme Court. I have my doubts about Ketanji Brown and Sotomayor because they're such stupid cows that it wouldn't surprise me. But at the very least, the other 7 are not going to have any of this. Have you noticed how people are already in the clickbait media talking about Roberts? How we have to see what he does because he always betrays us. He never does.
No, I mean, the worst decision he made was over Obamacare, and
but you know what?
What?
We were all, from the moment that shit was written, screaming bloody murder because it was a tax.
Yeah.
Disguised as a health bill. And we said it was a tax. When it came to the Supreme Court, the mandate was attacked on the basis of its illegality, and the government said, but it is a tax. And the Supreme Court agreed, yep, it is a tax and it falls within Congress's authority to tax, which is precisely what all of us have been saying for a year. The problem is not Roberts, the problem is Congress. It was a tax. And I'm not going to change my opinion just because it doesn't suit me now.
Well, the government, I mean, Roberts told the government this is a tax, and then they went, "Oh yeah, it's a tax."
That was their position before they went for the arguments, because the Solicitor General stated from the first he touched this thing, this is a tax. It falls within Congress's authority to tax. And the Democrats fucked us with Obamacare coming and going. They fucked us with the 11th hour non-reconciliation and let's vote on the Senate bill without modifications. Remember that? A lot of morons wanted to go to reconciliation, and they got outmaneuvered by Pigliosi.
No, I think the issue with Roberts is that he basically helped the Obama administration out by saying it's a tax and not a fee, and then they said, "Oh yeah, that's it." Mm-hmm. So he said they called it a fee, but they meant to call it a tax, and so
that is true.
What he should have done is he should have taken them at their word that it was a fee and not given them an out. But on the other hand, he hasn't done anything like that ever since because the blowback was gigantic. And
the blowback was gigantic, and every case is different. But I'm not going to agree every time with all of them. As a matter of fact, they don't do it among themselves.
No.
But it seems pretty obvious.
He already stated in 2008, I believe, that that the president is immune. We should address that lie that if they find Trump, I mean, this is a different thing.
That's a different case. Just to put a period on this one, SCOTUS is going to tell the Supreme Court in Colorado to go fuck itself. And Trump, who's never been taken out of the ballot in either Colorado or Maine because he is still there pending appeal, is going to remain there. And not that much changes because with or without those two states, he is going to be the Republican nominee, period, end of story. It's going to be the end of it. At least it's going to stop cases in other states from snowballing. And now we go to the other case because, the litigious Democrats love lawfare to stop democracy from working.
Right. And so the argument is that Trump can't be immune as president because then that would give him the ability to murder someone in the Oval Office and get away with it. But this is a lie because the immunity talks about decisions he makes in the line of duty as president and
within the performance of his duties.
And so murdering someone in the Oval Office is not part of the job description of president. So of course he could be held criminally liable for committing any crime,
whatever.
Oval Office,
taking a bribe.
I mean,
killing somebody, assault and battery. He could be sued for assault and battery, and it would fly. What people cannot do, we cannot sue Biden for getting Afghanistan wrong.
No.
Now, if we can prove that he received payment in exchange for his policy, it's a different thing. But then we're going after the bribery, not the policy.
Right. And you can't hold a president criminally liable for a policy that you disagree with.
Exactly.
You can hold a president criminally liable for crimes he commits that fall, any crime he commits, an actual crime. These are all the same sorts of people who, I remember when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade, and immediately all these leftists started saying they just made abortion illegal. And that's what brought out the vote in 2022 was that particular issue. And a hell of a lot of the people voting had no idea what the hell they were voting on because they thought the Supreme Court just made it illegal. And so what we have to do is we have to get the federal government to pass another Roe v. Wade. It was just madness. And I don't think abortion is going to be a factor in the 2024 election.
It better not be.
I don't think it is because nobody's talking about it. They tried to bring it up. It didn't work. I mean, they're back to Trump is Hitler, and if Trump is elected, it's the end of democracy. But Trump already has a record as president, so that dog won't hunt either.
Oh, and so do the Democrats talk about the end of democracy as we know it,
Yeah.
from censorship to the persecution of political opponents to using the government to crash the opposition. I mean, these people are like fucking Stalin light.
Yeah. No, and everybody sees that now. I mean, that's why they can't understand, why does Trump get more popular? Why does he get more support the more he's indicted? And it's because the indictments are bogus. We can see that,
and everybody can see that.
Yeah, it's an illegitimate use of the judicial system.
Yeah. And by the way, we haven't discussed yet the case against Trump for classified materials. Among other things, because this shit ain't gonna be tried until after the elections. It's off the calendar. Did you notice that?
Yeah.
It's off the calendar. They're gonna have to sit down and figure out a new trial date eventually after the Supreme Court hands its certiorari, and it's not gonna fucking happen. Because by the time they do this, we're going to be in a full campaign swing, and I doubt there is a judge in a land full of corrupt judges that would touch that shit with a 10-foot pole 2 months before the election. They're going to kick the can down the road.
Well, I mean, the whole thing, I mean, Jack Smith is another corrupt special.
Oh God, is he ever?
And this notion that he's demanding a speedy trial, he doesn't have the right to do that.
No, and he's not going to get it now anyway. I mean, this is the one that is taken down, that has been taken down the calendar. The original trial date in March is suspended. We'll let you know when we think of something. The Supreme Court has to pronounce itself on the immunity, and then there's going to be 3 or 4 more motions of the same tenor, because Trump is going to claim that he declassified that material. He's going to claim that he had every right to have it. He's going to claim that the entire basis for the trial is moot. And like Biden, who was not president when he literally stole documents from the Senate, from the National Archives. And by the way, did you see the nature of the shit that Biden had?
Yeah.
Iran nuclear plans, Afghanistan troop movements, and then he circulated those.
Mm-hmm.
He gave them to his ghostwriter, who quotes verbatim from some of these. And the ghostwriter did a Hillary Clinton on it and deleted all the files. By the way, there is no such thing as deleting files.
Don't forget that Biden was the one who identified the SEAL Team 6 as the men who
he fingered them.
Laden raid, and they had all been sworn to secrecy, and the next day Biden
fingered them.
The beans, and they ended up paying for that in Afghanistan when the same unit was wiped out in a Chinook helicopter and suffered the greatest combat loss in the entire history of the SEALs.
Biden put a target on them.
Yep.
Biden is the little asshole who, in a meeting at the Oval Office on January 7th, of all things, in 2017, proposed that the Department of Injustice go after General Flynn using the Logan Act. It was Biden who came up with that idea. Of course, that's because he doesn't know the fucking law. Because nobody would have done that. And Donita says, oh my God, that was Biden? Yes. And in the notes that Comey took of the meeting, he specifically writes that it was the VP who proposed it. Now, Biden was the only vice president in that room. So it was Biden who came up with the stupid idea.
Biden is a vicious, vindictive man, and
Yes.
he's always been a vicious, vindictive man.
Oh, since he was little.
And I'll never forget this whole notion. You know, I was amazed when Obama chose Biden, and the press started saying he chose him to give his campaign gravitas. And I thought,
I was cracking up.
Joe Biden and gravitas in the same sentence? Please.
No. He chose Biden because Biden was the only asshole in all of Christendom stupider than Obama.
Well, and then when the same people started saying that we had to choose Biden because he would bring decency back to the White House, and it's Joe Biden and decency, you can't use them in the same sentence any more than you can use Joe Biden.
You cannot use them in the same paragraph.
No, Biden has always been an indecent man, and the fact that he's still indecent even though now he's senile. And
yeah. By the way, when he was going to bring decency back into the White House, he was already the great snifter.
Yeah.
He was a child molester.
Yeah.
And now we know through the diaries of his niece and through his son's computer that he was a serial molester.
His daughter.
His daughter.
His daughter was
molested his daughter, for crying out fucking loud.
She was taking showers with him when she was 16 years old.
Yeah. Now, I will readily admit right here, right now, in front of you, that when my daughter was 2 years old, I would hold her with me and give her a shower. 2 years old.
Yeah, I mean...
As of 5, no fucking way, darling.
Well, not even nudists shower with their 16-year-olds. I mean...
No.
It's...
No. And by the way, a 2-3-year-old is a cute baby. A 16-year-old is a woman.
Well, okay, that's that whole Epstein thing where it's like, you know, she's between pubescence and she's under 18, you know, between, you know, 15, 16, 17. That's what Epstein went for. And in the case of Biden, I think he doesn't seem to have any age preference. I mean, you saw that ghastly attempt to do a campaign stop where someone was leading him into this room by the upper arm, and he was going, ah! And then he saw the 17-year-old, and he just started going in on her. She was smiling, going, shrinking back against it, away from him.
By the way, since we are getting serious, it's time to get the fuck out of you, boob. Good night, you boob. You come and see us in Odyssey.